Hey guys, this week super awesome for me. We touched on the book of Colossians in this class with our Gorman textbook. Super great. So it's chapter 15, so I'm going to go ahead and do the opening page on 471. Colossians, the cosmic crucified Christ as the wisdom of God. Wisdom is going to be a key note that we see throughout the book of Gorman when it's speaking of Colossians, because it is a theme that we see here. It goes into a verse of Colossians 2:2-3. God's mystery, that is Christ himself, in whom are hidden are all treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Wisdom ultimately is developed through life experience, your actions, knowledge, and it is being able to make sound judgment to others, and it's the act of being wise. Having wisdom means to be wise. So we're going to see this theme is as you read on, you're going to see this theme throughout the book of Colossians. If you know me, you know I love the story behind the letter and the story in the letter itself. So the story behind the letter is ultimately to give to the people here in that they are Galatia, I can't say it right. That Christ gives spiritual life and liberation. So the purpose is to just show that Christ is all you need. It's sufficient enough. Christ has everything. The story in the letter we can look at and see that Christ has wisdom, power, and sufficiency. So again, Christ has the wisdom, the power, and sufficiency. So we see the wise, we see the all-powerful, the divinity within him, and then we also see the sufficiency that it's supposed to give us. Right? So we are going to go ahead and move right on to the outline, which is found on page 478. This is where it kind of ties in with everything I've been kind of going through at work. We've really been looking on how to bring people together and what it looks like and what's the meaning of it. So in our book, actually, this week, it talked about liturgical. I hope I'm saying that right, found on page 479. Liturgical comes from the word liturgy, which is the customary communal practices of people coming together within worship in order to show praise and thanksgiving. It's the reflection of it. So for us, if we have a praise band at church, they come on, we do praise and worship. That's a form of liturgy for us that we have in modern day society. Maybe we read the Bible together. We do things in a communal group. So for us at work, we've been looking at a way to make our students communal. And what does it look like? So we started that we came across liturgy and what it looks like, and which led me to our book this week. So super great way to apply it. So liturgical means public worship. So we know liturgy is the communal practice and the action of doing it is the public worship. It comes from the origin of a Greek word called liturgikos. It's an adjective and it's the act of performing a service within the ministry itself. So like our clergymen, we have pastors, those who perform it. So we have our Greek word that means to perform the service. We have liturgical, which is in our book where it talks about the public worship form, and then it comes from the word liturgy where it's a communal practice. So literally it's talking about community and practice led by someone. This week is how I am seeing this. So ultimately, liturgical is about the majesty or the majestic majesty and worship is how Gorman described it. It is in the first letter in its first portion of the letter, which is focused on thanksgiving. So this week I'm focusing predominantly on that. So Thanksgiving, ultimately, Paul and Timothy both in the letter is in Colossians is giving to God faith, hope, and love, and they are doing this in Christ. So they're looking in Christ, in whom Christ lives in, and Christ as a whole, or who it is. And it's ultimately talking about God's will and wisdom and understanding is done in the intercessor. And so what that means is, again, Paul and Timothy is shifting in their prayer here, and they're revealing their intercessory prayer for Colossians, and it's looking for the fullness of the wisdom. And when they do this, they're asking for God's will to be known. They're looking for the wisdom. They're seeking for the understanding. And this is also going back, as they're doing this, they're praying for the practical and ethical purpose to live. And on page 480, it talks about bearing fruit in every good work. It talks about growing in knowledge of God, being straight for suffering. Basically, it's asking for the endurance to persevere through it. And I think this part, that's kind of like the key one. So remember that, because it's going to go into our hymn. And then giving thanks to God the Father, ultimately at the very end, of course. So in the hymn is the way we close petitionary prayer, which is like our standard prayer, and it leads into the hymn or the poem, which is a rhythmic pattern. It has a certain rhythm to it, and it's, a narrative. It's a general character, and that we see in Philippians 2:6-11, as Gorman says. But ultimately we call it a hymn. So a hymn gives us these words of praise that we need to have in order to give the exaltation to God. And basically, as we're reading through this and we're able to give this, we're able to find, for me, I feel this way, and Gorman even says it, a way that we can create reconciliation through Christ. We're able to learn how to apply the hymn in our own life. We're able to benefit from it, just like the Colossians did, in Christ's death, and understands God's purpose. So I feel like where we looked at it on page 480, when it says being strengthened for the suffering, in reference to endurance, patience, and joy, we see this as we look at the hymn and the exhortation itself and what it looks like, and it's being able to apply it, and it's also being able to understand who Christ is as a whole, as well as understanding God's purpose for us. I'm past time, but yeah, we're done.